Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast, episode 80. We are today talking about the Cestus, a 65-ton mech. I am your host, Brent Stewart. My co-hosts today are...
I'm Joshua.
And I'm Chandler.
And the Cestus is a unique machine. It's an interesting machine, but it's not one that you see quite often. In fact, I discovered quite a bit about it as I was doing research for this episode, and all of it is cool and neat and interesting. So I hope you enjoy the show. The Cestus is a design that dates back to 2609, but was first commercially produced in 2766. Was produced on Cathil by General Motors until the destruction of the factory by the Capellan Confederation Armed Forces during the Second Succession War. Conceived as a heavy energy weapon-based support mech, its first iteration was held back by the heat requirements of the PPC and the lasers in its original design, as it lacked double heat sinks and they were not yet available. Under the second revision that the SLDF would greenlight, they swapped the PPCs out for a prototype Gauss rifle and dropped the pulses to regular lasers. The original design would be built later on in the 6Z or Z. The relatively slow speed of the Cestus is balanced by the long-reach punch of its weapons. The Cestus was resurrected by General Motors on Cathil and then licensed to Blue Shot Weapons on Solaris 7. General Motors has had a major push to sell the Cestus only to the Federated Commonwealth Armed Forces in the days before the FedCom Civil War era. They were only truly successful with the Capellan March and the Rimworld Combat Zone. The Blue Shot Weapons sold the machine to the Larian Alliance Armed Forces, to many units along the Clan Jade Falcon border, and also to the Kellhounds and other prestigious mercenary units.
Yeah, this is an interesting design. I kind of have to agree with the critics who say it's a little slow for a 65-tonner. Not uncommon, though, in 65 inner-sphere tonners to be 4.6 instead of, say, 5.8.
Mhm.
You get more firepower, more armor, but it's kind of a sad trade-off, in all honesty.
Yeah, like it's a trade-off, but it does fill a very interesting niche on the battlefield, and I think it has some pretty interesting spots where it can shine. Like,
Yeah, if you're going to be rocking 4.6, I'd like to see a 75-tonner.
I mean, also fair.
That's just how
Sorry, Chandler, you were saying?
Yeah, I definitely think its issue is it's sharing a very similar niche to the Thunderbolt, with them both being 65-ton heavy mechs that move 4.6, except for all those really wacky Thunderbolts that are faster than 4.6, but we're not going to talk about those.
Because we already did.
Yes, because we already did. Shameless plug for other episode, insert here. But I definitely feel like the Cestus is definitely different, especially in the variants without any sort of ballistic or missile weaponry, as it's not reliant on any sort of supply chains. But then, in addition, it also doesn't explode, which is always nice.
Yes.
Explosions tend to...
I mean, the Gauss rifle version can explode.
Yeah.
And like, it is a very good point that Chandler raised, that this is the same weight as the Thunderbolt, and it's functioning in pretty much the same role. And as we've covered before, the Thunderbolt is a very high watermark, so that is a hard thing to compete with.
Yeah, Thunderbolt's one of the best mechs ever designed.
But that is not to say that this is a bad mech, because it is not.
Yeah, definitely feel like the Cestus is much more focused on anti-mech role than being as supportive as the Thunderbolt can be with its missile launchers and all its other assorted weaponry.
Mm-hmm. So the Cestus has the design quirk of a stabilized weapon Gauss rifle, and the stabilized weapon is a rule that doesn't come up too often, or a design quirk that doesn't come up too often, and so I thought it'd be good to cover it. And it reads in the rule book that stabilized weapon, and then whatever the variety of weapon it is a weapon that is mounted in the center torso or head of the machine. An example given is the mongoose, and as such they are better cushioned against shocks and impacts, or otherwise compensate for any movement sort of modifiers or instability, therefore increasing the accuracy as it moves. If the mech runs, all target numbers for that weapon receive a -1. The cost is 1 point per 7 points of fraction thereof of the maximum damage the weapon could inflict in a single damage value grouping. If the weapon deals 0 damage, such as tag, the cost is 1 point more than one weapon can receive this bonus.
Okay, so in English, layman's terms.
So if you run, it gets a -1 modifier to your targeting roll, and
Okay, so instead of basically when you run, it's the same penalty as if you walk.
And
Okay.
Yes, and if you walk, it's the same as you stand still because
Yes.
it's any movement. And if you jump, it's 1 less, so it makes it like you ran.
Okay, that's pretty
But
sweet.
the cost comes with 1 point of damage removed per 7 points, or a fraction thereof, in a grouping. So in this case, we're looking at a Gauss rifle. So you have
a single group of 15.
a single group of 15, and so
which is
per 7 points.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's more than 2 7-point groups. So you take 3 damage
Yeah,
off.
so it would go down to 12.
So it's still a head capper.
Absolutely. Like, it's a cool, neat ability, but it does come at a cost.
Does it stack with targeting computer
That actually I don't know.
Yes.
or AES?
You can
Should.
confirm that?
There's nothing saying it can't. I'm
This is
double
true.
checking in the Battlemech manual right now to get a most
So you-
up-to-date reading.
So if you had this little quirk and a targeting computer, you'd be -1 walking, +0 moving.
+1 jumping.
That's a fine quirk there.
When you can get quirks to stack, they become very powerful.
So something to remember is the points that it mentions is not taking away from its firepower. It's not reducing the amount of power it puts. It's the cost of the quirk itself when active, I think. I'm trying to figure out what the point refers to.
Okay. Yeah, I have not played with a lot of design quirks, so this is me sticking my feet in the water and figuring it out as we go, if I am being completely honest. But having done a lot of D&D, I feel like I'm pretty good at really reading rule books, so...
Yeah, so the point it's referring to is the cost of the quirk, but I don't know if that's points in BV or points in something else.
So it's not reducing the damage?
It's not reducing the damage.
Oh, so it would cost 1 point per 7 points of the weapon,
so-
like a C3 network. It would increase.
Well, but
think
that
so.
C3 network increases the BV. It's not a point cost. Point cost, this is probably treated like
It just says the cost.
special pilot abilities in Alpha Strike.
It's a little ambiguous on the wording there.
Yeah, I just don't know what the cost is.
Yeah, it's probably treated just like special pilot abilities in Alpha Strike. So I know for Alpha Strike, like I said, this is probably the exact same thing. There's a cost listed for special pilot abilities, and you don't actually pay that cost in PV or any other meaningful number. It's just you can have so many points for the in Alpha Strike. It's the skill level of the pilot and the number of pilots in the list.
Right. So I just pulled out one of the cards I got with the Kickstarter, and special pilot abilities cost and then a point number. So if I am understanding this correctly, this would cost on the Cestus 3 points because it's 15 damage. So the cost of the skill is 3 points, and you would get the modifier for the to hit rolls. And if I recall the rules for the costs on this pilot special abilities, it is basically another point system that you balance. So I have BV X value and my
Yes.
opponent has BV Y value, which is, within the window that we agree for the scenario. And then my pilots have B amount of points and my opponent has to have the same B amount of points or agree to have less.
Essentially.
So, and the problem I have with it, and I understand that factoring in special abilities to point values becomes very difficult. It's one of the more complicated things in like Warhammer and their special unit abilities, or X-Wing and the special pilot abilities. How do you quantify this ability?
Yeah.
But in BattleTech, the problem is, or Alpha Strike, they don't even try to get them to tie into the balancing points, the PV or the BV.
It's a different vector entirely.
Yeah, and to me it makes that those points basically useless because we're playing an 8,000 BV game and we have to say, okay, well, and we're a 10 SPA game as well, or a 20 SPA game.
Like the only real, and this is not very clean, but the cleanest, we'll say, thing I can think of is like you have a tournament where it's 40k or 8k or like whatever battle value you're using, 9k. 40k is an insane battle value, but you know what I'm trying to say. We're just talking about Warhammer, so slip. But it's like, okay, 4k/4. So you can have 4 pilot abilities points. But that is also another thing that you have to check. But I also played Canadian Highlander where you had a points list, so that isn't that foreign to me.
Yeah, one system, just put in the time and just assign these values. Give it a single system that we are working in instead of having to juggle multiple systems.
Well, Chandler, if you can add that to the notes in the binder that we are going to drop off at Catalyst Games for rule set 2.0.
Yeah. One of the other things that's mentioned about the point system is it's encouraged for people who are designing mechs with quirks to try to balance them out. So essentially, let's say I'm adding something that has a +2, quirk point, we'll just say, cost. And then I would give it something that has a -2 or just a -1, something to try to balance it out.
Yeah.
So it has accurate weapon, and then it, doesn't have hands or doesn't have arms,
Like if you're going to homebrew something, try to make it a net 0 for the points.
Or like static ammo feed.
It's great for campaign.
Mm-hmm.
All of this stuff works pretty well when you're playing with a GM and it's a campaign. But when you're trying to make something that's a little more just sit down and play.
So if you're playing a pickup game, they're very difficult and unwieldy to do. But if you're playing a campaign like a D&D game where you have a dedicated group that is showing up once a week and there's somebody running your Op 4 who's also the storyteller or DM, it can work absolutely amazingly.
Yeah.
Yes. So now that we've been off topic into not just the weeds, but we started sifting through the sand particles on this one.
I think we got some dirt under the microscope there too.
Is it dirt or is it soil?
I mean, isn't this closer to your area of expertise than mine?
Yes, that's why.
Well, getting back to the machines and away from this lovely digression about the design quirks, we have our first machine, which is the CTS-6X, seen in 2609. And this guy is got a movement profile of 4.6. It's got a large laser and a medium pulse laser and a PPC in the right arm. And then it has the same in the left arm. It's got 14 single heat sinks and a XL engine.
I like it. I think the only problem I have with it is it's very heat hungry. Like, holy heap, is it heat hungry? I'd almost like to see both the PPC and large laser on each arm replaced with something ballistic, just to give it firepower that's not going to overheat it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe like one half of it is replaced with a ballistic, and then the other arm still has both, or something. Just because this thing is toasty. I mean, You fire one arm, you're overheating.
Yeah, this thing just screams it was designed before double heat sinks and it was designed with them in mind, and it just they weren't ready there yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what the evaluators said. So
I do find the weapon loadout interesting. It reminds me a lot of the Marauder with the two arms holding a bunch of laser weapons.
Mm-hmm.
It's just missing the torso gun for the time being anyway. I
mean, it does also kind of have a somewhat slumped forward torso design, not quite as canonical or bulbous as the Marauder, but definitely not humanesque.
Yeah, it doesn't have a head.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like a bean with legs and arms and guns.
It is true, and the arms are actually mounted quite far back, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting in the TRO, it mentions that it has both hand actuators, so if it gets into hand-to-hand combat, it's capable of gripping or striking an opponent as necessary. Just mech scale jujitsu.
Mm-hmm. Rock'em sock'em robots.
I would be very curious to see what they would do with more modern art.
Yeah.
Because there's some elements of this older art that I really like the legs. And the arms aren't bad either. Very very streamlined on both of them.
I do like the hands on the arms, because they don't look like traditional hands. They look kind of like the grabber claws that have kind of like turned into a bulb at the end that will open up and grasp whatever it needs to.
I feel like it could the torso could use some better proportioning, and
Yeah, and there's some fan art that does a decent job of trying to give it a more modern design, one of which I just posted, and it's pretty good. Holds very closely to the original idea, which I like.
Mhm.
Just new. It's not 80s line art, because the Cestus never gets past 80s line art pretty much.
It is true. Although I think it came out in like the 2000s, somewhere around there, or at least that might be the update.
2000s,
Or time stay.
80s.
Yeah. I mean, like the design aesthetic holds true throughout BattleTech for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So the first guy's got a battle value of 1428 and a point value of 31. We then come to the 6Y in 2766, and it has that same movement profile of 4.6. It has a Gauss rifle in the right torso, a large laser and a medium laser in the right arm, and same in the left arm. It's got 12 double heat sinks and that XL engine, and it has 3 tons of ammo, 2 in the right torso, 1 in the center torso.
now this guy is definitely an improved version.
Oh yeah.
Trading both PPCs for a Gauss is a slight downgrade in total firepower, but a massive upgrade in usable firepower.
True. And you also get an increase in range.
However, what I find kind of ironic about it is that not only does it get rid of the Gauss rifle, or gain the Gauss rifle and get rid of the PPCs, it gains double heat sinks.
Yeah, I mean, it is 157 years since its older brother, so, the Star League got some time to make some double heat sinks, and they became available.
Which you don't really get that sense of time in the TRO, because it's like, hey, they made this design and it was way too hot. Then they developed a prototype with the Gauss rifle,
and then that one was greenlit, and it's like, oh yeah, that was like what, maybe 5 years. It's like, no, that was a chunk of time. So this one was clearly sitting on the shop floor with them tinkering it for quite a while.
Yeah, it's what, like 157 years?
Yeah.
It might be one of those things where it's GM, General Motors, manufacturing this. All right, so they didn't like this prototype. They canceled the order. All right, just shuffle it off into the back room.
Sits in a filing cabinet for 150 years till someone dusts it off.
Yeah, and then 3 generations of engineers later, they go, oh, hey, we could totally put up Gauss rifles are common now. They're all the rage. If we pull up the PPCs, we could fit one of those. Double heat sinks, because why not? We're turning them out by the million for this other battle mech.
I mean, that being said, it actually is a prototype Gauss rifle that they fitted onto it. Not mechanically, but in the lore. It was a early prototype of the Gauss rifle. So maybe that it just became available, and someone was just like, for 10 or 15 years after they read about it, they were like, one day I'm gonna make this thing good. And finally the Gauss rifle came along, and they were like, I can do it.
Makes sense.
Done. I have the power. Cue very sad AC-10 manufacturers in the background.
Yeah.
And PPC manufacturers.
It's true.
Yeah, that too.
So the 6Y has a battle value of 1701 and a point value of 37.
Because why not?
Next, we come to the 6Y-EC, and this is a machine that comes from Clan Fire Mandrel, or more specifically, a Fire Mandrel upgrade, and it was seen in 2822. It adds 2 prototype ER medium lasers, and those medium lasers were procured from the Falcons, and they also add 2 improved large lasers, and they improve the Gauss rifle as well. So, yeah, pretty neat. It's got the 4.6 movement, and just to go down the record sheet so the format is complete, it's got a improved large laser and a ER medium laser prototype in the left arm, same in the right arm, and then an improved Gauss rifle in the right torso. It's got 4 tons of ammo, 2 in the right torso, 2 in the center torso, and because it is Clan, the right torso has case built in.
Yeah, it's a Cestus, but better, because it's using halfway tech.
Yep.
Which we could go on another tangent here, because I feel like this this tech would have been great for like a post Dark Age leveling of the tech base. Hey, the clan homeworlds had the manufacturing, and the best they've been able to do in the Inner Sphere is their hybrid tech from the Golden Century when they were moving that direction. And so we're just standardizing on that technology going forward into the Ill Clan era. But never gonna happen.
Like the Inner Sphere has worked its way to that, and the clans have been bumped down to it, and then they both work to get together in air quotes to get back to clan tech.
Yep. But never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen. I mean, that means you're gonna have to give up on it, and never gonna give you up. I don't know how I tried to work that in there. It got stuck in my head somehow.
Sometimes, Chandler, you're just a huge letdown. So
I'm never gonna run around, Brent.
We're gonna move right along, and this has a battle value of 1783 and a point value of 37.
Why am I here?
So we have
Just
our next model, the 6Z or 6Z, seen in 30/58. This guy has a movement profile of 4/6. It's got a large laser, a medium laser, and a PPC in the right arm, same in the left arm. But it also has 16 double heat sinks, and of course that XL engine that all of them have had. So it's the original version as intended, actually able to manage that heat.
Kind of.
I mean,
36.
Look,
well, with the PPCs being range bracketed, you're good.
Yeah, like as long as you're not alpha striking, you can take turn off with firing one large laser and 2 PPCs, and you'll be fine to ride that heat scale.
Yeah. Put it this way: this has an overheat of 1 and a base attack value of 4 in the short and medium range brackets, whereas the original Cestus with the same loadout or similar loadout, pulses instead of mediums, had a 2/2 and an overheat of 3. So you're getting a lot more usable firepower out of this. Not quite as much as that.
The EC?
No, I don't really count that one because it didn't see widespread use in the Inner Sphere and Periphery.
So the 6Y then?
Yeah, the Gauss rifle one, which has no overheat, but it has a straight up damage of 5 and 5 at short and medium range and alpha strike. So they all have the same maximum damage. It's just a matter of how much they can bring to bear in a single turn without generating too much heat.
Yeah, like we didn't really talk about the heat on the 6Y because it was easily managed. Like legitimately, if you're alpha striking and running, you will generate 1 heat.
Much more usable and user-friendly.
But the 6Z or Z has a battle value of 1560 and a point value of 36. And real strong.
What the Z's missing?
What?
It's missing an autocannon.
I think we might have something for you a little later in the show. But before that, we have the
foreshadowing.
But before that, we have the one and only named variant, the Cestus Allard Liao, and it is special and unique because it has jump jets. It's got a movement profile of 464. It can. It's got a large laser and a medium laser in the left arm, same in the right arm, and in the right torso. It's got a Gauss rifle. It has 2 tons of ammo in the right torso. It has an XL engine. And it has endo steel. It has 12 double heat sinks, and of course, as mentioned before, it can jump. So that makes it quite interesting.
Bad.
Interesting and bad can coexist.
So it's not meant to be a jumper. It's a heavy mech.
Yes, I mean we have talked off air many times about how
and on.
Yeah, true. About how the jumping return diminishes the heavier you get, which I agree with. But every so often,
wait a second,
something big that can jump is interesting.
Wait just a gosh darn second. Wasn't your Wolfnet ride a jumping Thunderbolt?
Yes. The difference is it has improved jump jets.
The kettle calling the pot
calling the kettle. Yeah.
Yeah. But so okay.
I mean, those weigh even more.
All right, everyone, let's watch Josh dig up.
So my original ride when I got into BattleTech Serious was a Wolverine 9W2, which is a 55 tonner with 7 improved jump jets. Because jumping 7 is the bee's knees. When I went to WNRP, they said, okay, you're going to be the captain of Charlie Company. It's like, well, I need to be riding an immediate or a heavy at least, or an assault to be a CO. Like that, you just don't have a CO ride in a medium. That's not how things are done.
It's incredibly rare canonically.
So I went looking for the closest heavy I could find to the mech I was already used to. And that was the Thunderbolt 11 SE, which jumps 6 with improved jump jets, has a slightly larger MML launcher, has more lasers, and it also has the snub nose and the ECM, and is basically just a slightly bigger version of the 9W2. So that is why I have a jumping heavy as my ride.
I mean, also loophole with improved jump jets, right?
Yes, they're still heavier, but at least at that point you can get your
the return on your investment is better.
Yeah, because you can get up to your efficient jumping of 5 or hopefully 7. Ideally, yeah. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
But yeah, so I'm going to dust off the mental cobwebs and say that I feel like I remember reading that this is a prototype, and that kind of is backed up by the fact that the TRO says that they have abandoned trying to make jumping machines of this design because they don't think it is, like Josh agrees, super useful and viable at the regular jump jets. So you read the name Allard Liao and you think Kai. Most people think Kai, and that's normal. That's natural. That is a very safe assumption. But this is his sister's ride, isn't that right?
Yes, it is Cassandra Allard Liao's ride.
The whole family given a good showing.
Yes.
Yeah, not everybody gets to step out in Yen Lo Wang.
True.
No.
So this guy's got a battle value of 1857, and I could not find a point value for this because it actually it doesn't have a printed record sheet. I had to find one on Megamech, which was created by the community because the description is only in one of the books.
So it's a novel mech, not a source book mech.
Indeed. But, someone calculated it. It's listed on Master Unit List with the BV, so it's canon.
Yeah. Well, and if you've got the BV and you've got the book description, it's not too hard to figure out how the two match up.
So next up, we have the last model of the episode, the CTS-7A, and it has a movement profile of 4.6. It's got a LB-20XAC in the right torso and center torso. It has 2 Streak SRM-4s in the left torso. It's got an ER medium laser and a medium pulse laser in the right arm, and same in the left arm. It's got 12 double heat sinks, an XL engine, and where's the ammo for this thing?
All in the left torso.
I think we should start a petition to have this one renamed Cestus Chandler.
Yeah, all 4 tons are in the left torso, 1 ton of streak and 1 ton of slug, 2 tons of cluster. So how do you...
You don't like this one, Chandler?
Yeah, Chandler, how do you feel about this one?
So when I was looking to get out of the hunchback life, because I kept dying, because I'm too aggressive for a medium mech,
Don't you mean the hunchback is too slow for a medium mech?
The Cestus... no, it just doesn't have enough armor to handle me jumping in front of a king crab and going, hello, I am here. Even if it doesn't have AC-20s.
Oh, so we're chalking it up to pilot error.
Yes, it is pilot error. The Cestus 7A did come across my list, and I like it. It's a devastating city fighter or close-in, jungle or heavy terrain fighter.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be slow through it just because it can't jump, which to an extent, but oh well, I'll deal. But the biggest issues is, one, it has no reach, so if you get stuck out in the open, you're just kind of
it's long range.
There's
12.
no way you're going to be able to you're never going to be able to deal with something that's far out, that's just pinking away at you with LRMs
far
or
out,
lasers
man.
or that kind of stuff. Far out.
You can't handle the hippies, huh?
Yeah. And then also a really big issue, look at the left torso and tell me what you don't see there.
That would be case.
Yeah. If there's one thing that a hunchback taught me, other than to worship the AC-20, praise be AC-20, is the other part of the Trinity is case. because I cannot count the amount of times that Case let me limp my Hunchback off the field. And not having Case with that much ammo in one location is just asking to just detonate in a colorful explosion.
Mm-hmm.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
Because what? That's a, let's see, 5, 10, 15 times 20, 200 plus damage.
Well, it's 300 from the
It's
AC,
300,
and then the streak
so that's
is
300 damage just from autocannon ammo.
Yeah, and then the streak is another 50, so 350. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll core your mech out real quick.
Oh yeah.
You don't
If
say.
if that ammo gets touched, it's gone. There is no Cestus 7A left.
The Cestus was touched off, as seen from orbit.
Yes.
Where did that bad ammo explosion touch you?
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I mean, it is definitely
yeah,
interesting.
if it had
but,
Case,
yeah.
if it had Case, this would be great.
Mm-hmm.
You could totally, I don't know if it has the slots for it. I don't have a record sheet up for it right in front of me right now, but if you were to somehow fit ferrofibers on this and get Case on it, it would be a great little mech. It just runs around and shoots things. Not fancy, nothing crazy. You don't have to teach a pilot how to jump. You just throw them at the enemy and say, go kill them. And don't get stuck in the middle of an empty field.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got 14 slots that are free, but you could also theoretically drop the SRMs down to a single streak 6 and use that spare tonnage to
do that.
There's a couple places you could wiggle around. Yeah. No, I think this is a really cool machine. Definitely, like, it's just not quite there. You know, it's like 70% of the way to where it wants to be. And I'd like the I like the ER medium lasers and the medium pulse lasers. I think those are a neat little 1-2 punch, but the lack of the anything that can reach is also a real hindrance, as we already talked about.
Yeah, I can really see if we were to get like a Jihad or Civil War Kickstarter, and we ended up with a new bevy of Cestus models. I could totally see Blue Shot just being like, oh yeah, we're just going to tweak the 7A a little bit. Give it Case, maybe like Mask or a Supercharger, get it in there a little bit quicker, and boom. It's everything it ever needed.
Yeah.
You know, you get that little bit of extra speed to get you in, and then you've got the Case to keep you from being seen from orbit.
Yeah.
Mask, Supercharger, or TSM?
I want to say TSM because this can get hot, but that depends on the model.
See, I'm curious what you guys think.
If I was to base it off the 7A, I would have to ditch heat sinks, bring it down to just 10 double heat sinks, and then use that extra tonnage to slap on more laser to get me up to the proper heat curve.
Mm-hmm.
Because as it sits, it's pretty heat efficient.
Yes.
Especially since it's got so much firepower dedicated into ballistic and missile.
But just putting a TSM on, say, the 6Z.
Oh, yeah. It'd be great. You know, even if it is pretty heat efficient for a, all laser loadout with only 16 heat sinks, you could easily mess with it to get you up to 9 heat. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're going 5.8 and just running in the 90s.
Like mechanically, if you can hit with the PPCs and the large lasers, but not the medium lasers, you can still fire them at your target. They'll still auto miss, and you'll still generate the heat.
Yeah,
getting that TSM to be viable.
Forest.
Yeah,
or just shine them in the eyes of some VTOL pilot.
And don't forget, you don't actually have to say you don't actually have to shoot the lasers. You can always say I'm turning off a heat sink.
It's true.
But yeah. When it comes to classic, I prefer TSM over Mask or Supercharger on most anything because it's fairly easy to manage the heat, and then it's always on, and there's no drawbacks other than you're going to have a +1 to hit. Mm-hmm. Unlike TSM or unlike Mask or Supercharger, which you can start blowing out your own
components.
Yeah.
Unless you do what people like to do, where you just, all right, I'd use it for one turn, I turn it off.
Yeah.
I use it for one turn, I turn it off.
You leapfrog it.
Yeah, and you just kind of game that curve.
Yeah.
Which is completely valid. It just feels kind of cheeky.
It just doesn't fit your play style. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I've been using a Mad Cat W, and it has a supercharger, so I can go 5, 8, 10. And I just kind of every other turn I'll push it and go, use the 3 and go up to 10 just to kind of use it to get around things. And then if I really need to push it, I'll do it like 2 or 3 turns in a row just to get out of somewhere. If I've, bit off more than I can chew, which is always.
The not punch out abort button.
Yes.
Yeah.
what was the discussion I was having earlier? I never jam my Ultra 20, but the reason I don't is because I usually do something else to make it to where I can't jam it.
I no longer have an Ultra 20.
Yeah.
Either the Ultra 20 breaks, I break, or the ammo explodes. One of the two.
Well, ultimately, I think we can agree that the Cestus is a very interesting machine, and we look forward to what is going to happen with it when Catalyst eventually gets to do a redesign, a redux of it, whether it be in the 3058 era Kickstarter or what have you, or the Jihad, or it looks good.
Ill Clan.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see a reason for it popping up immediately in the Ill Clan, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah,
but a new mini of this guy would be
Cestus
absolutely sweet, I think.
Relatively, relatively associated with the Fed Suns, and so with a potential resurgent Fed Suns, if the Draconis Combine gets distracted, I could see the Cestus coming back around as just we need a lighter end heavy mech to just churn out in large numbers, just to throw at the enemy, because it's pretty simple. The most complicated thing it has is the XL engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking at the minis here, and they're not bad, but they definitely could use a redo. So we look forward to that redux when it comes. Huzzah!
Yeah, we hope it comes
soon. You hear that, CGL?
So our next segment, of course, is pilot profiles.
So first pilot for tonight is Lieutenant Isadora Patel, a member of the Islamabad Capellan March Militia, 2nd Battalion. She was on field maneuvers when Colonel Teresa Daniels, leading the 1st and 3rd companies of the 3rd Taurian Lancers on a blooding mission, landed on Islamabad, masquerading as pirates. Lieutenant Isadora Patel was part of the detachment defending the town of Cohagen, and both the Islamabad CMM and the 1st and 3rd companies of the 3rd Taurian Lancers were very inexperienced units. That's why the Taurians were there, was to get some experience. And so there were a lot of errors, and it could have been just a comedic action if not for the loss of life and the destruction of property. And it nearly turned incredibly tragic when the Taurian commander mistook a Hindi ashram for a concealed military base and ordered it to be destroyed. Fortunately for the Hindi ashram and its occupants, Lieutenant Patel and the rest of her completely fresh, never seen combat lance took up positions to protect it and blocked off the Taurian attack until Colonel Daniels realized her mistake and called off the attack on the ashram. Lieutenant Patel in her Cestus claimed 2 plainsmen, a vindicator, and a guillotine.
I mean, that guillotine is a pretty nice feather in your cap.
Yeah, especially when you're a 65-ton mech. So, impressive performance by inexperienced pilots against inexperienced pilots.
Sometimes that be how it be.
Yeah.
I wonder how we keep giving you Davian folks when you're a Taurian.
It's because they fight Taurians?
Yeah, Brent just wants to see how long before I snap.
I'm just trying to give
part
you
of
as
our
much
cultural exchange project.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm a Calderon Protectorate guy in the current timeline, and they did conduct exchange programs between the Protectorate and the Federated Suns.
I did not know that.
Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. The more you know.
Starwipe. So for our data dive today, we are going to look not at one of the noble houses, not at one of the periphery states, but at a mercenary company, the Eridani Light Horses. When we say mercenary, what comes to mind? For most, it is the image of a group of people, rough and tumble, mismatched clothes and equipment, and likely a group resembles a bunch of misfits that don't fit anyplace else.
I don't know. I think professionals.
Well, let me get to that. But that is only an example at one end of the spectrum of the mercenary life. The mercenaries we will be talking about today are long-standing paragons of the other side of the scale, the side that can put regular military units to shame, that have trained and drilled their parade formations and have their own models of battlemechs. Today we are talking about the Eridani Light Horses. The Eridani Light Horses are one of the longest and most well-respected mercenaries in the Inner Sphere. While their exploits are not as well documented as the Wolf's Dragoons, the Northwind Highlanders, the Kellhounds, or the Grey Death Legion, they are without a doubt one of the prime mercenaries of the Inner Sphere.
So, real quick, Brent,
Yeah.
before our fans scream at us, it is not and never pronounced Eridani Light Horses.
Oh,
because it is a unit of horse.
My bad. Okay, singular. My bad.
Yeah, old military naming.
Nomenclature?
Conventions.
Yeah, it's a unit of horse.
Fair enough. Today we talk about the Eridani Light Horse. The Light Horse unit was formed in 2702 as a 3rd Regimental Combat Team, originally composed of 2 strike regiments, the 19th and the 21st Strike Regiments, and the 2 Light Horse Regiments, the 71st Light Horse Regiment, known as the White Horse Regiment, and the 151st Light Horse Regiment, known as the Dark Horse Regiment. I mean, I just naturally want to pluralize it. It's I gotta... The unit was christened during the conflict of 2749, when assassins under the direction of the Prince of Rasselhag killed the commander of the 3rd RTC Commander. In response, the unit occupied every major city and industrial base, not only on the planet, but the district. But most of the fighting happened on Trondheim, around the city of Eridani. The units were able to drive off the pursuing opposing forces with such zeal that a journalist commented that they were like spirited Eridani stallions chasing after fat and clumsy Luthian cows. Naturally, after these events, the prince was forced to give up and prosecute these quote-unquote rebels. The Eridani Light Horse were deployed to the periphery, as was the majority of the SLDF, when Amaris enacted his plan to take power from the Cameron Line. They moved towards Terra, but when they arrived in what was Terran hegemony space, they quickly realized that any direct action was a suicide mission. So they set about disrupting supply lines and destroying industrial bases on the edge of the new Amaris Empire. During one of the raids, the 19th Strike Regiment was destroyed because of a traitor in their ranks supplying information to Amaris' forces, resulting in the 19th being ambushed by 3 reinforced regiments. Naturally, the 3 remaining regiments joined Alexander Kerensky in his efforts to liberate Terra and avenge their lost regiment. After the liberation of Terra, the Eridani Light Horse, like many SLDF units, returned to their former postings. For the Light Horse, that was the Rasselhag district in the Draconis Combine. There they waited and served as de facto garrison for the Draconis Combine. They waited until General Kerensky made his call, the call for the Exodus. In contrast to most of the SLDF, most of the Eridani Light Horse chose to stay in the Inner Sphere. The unit as a whole recognized the roots it had put down during the time defending the Rasselhag district and did not wish to abandon their duty to the people. We do not have an exact number, but effectively from the remaining regiments, approximately 2 to 3 lances joined the Great General in his march into the unknown. This is rather shocking when you look at the service record of the general and see that he commanded the 80th Heavy Cavalry Battalion early in his career. Anecdotally, it is reported that they only deliberated for 30 minutes before voting to stay in the Inner Sphere.
I like this about the Eridani Light Horse. They swore an oath to defend not the Inner Sphere as a whole per se, but that kind of became when the Terran hegemony disintegrated, they transferred their oath to protect the Terran hegemony to the Inner Sphere. And so when Kerensky wanted to abandon the Inner Sphere, they weren't willing to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that about them.
It does show like the moral character or direction of the unit, and especially if things came to push or shove in a bad situation where they would put their chips, which I think is something you can build a reputation around.
Mm-hmm.
But just because the Star League was no more and the great Alexander Kerensky was disappearing into the great beyond, did not mean that the ideas of the Star League were dead. As we saw with the Northwind Highlanders, we see again in the Eridani Light Horse, for a different flavor. For the Eridani Light Horse, in abandoning their SLDF brothers and sisters by staying behind, swore a solemn oath. They swore to uphold the values and conventions of the Star League, even when their opponents did not. On the day that the great general departed from New Samarkand, they lowered the Star League flag and put the RTC flag at half-staff while observing a moment of silence, silently swearing a sacred pledge to be ready for the return of the Star League. And from that point on, they always had 2 flagpoles at their headquarters, one with the RTC flag at half-staff, the other bare, waiting for the day when the Star League flag could once more be proudly flown. Minoru Kurita made many overtures to retain or integrate the Eridani Light Horse into the DCMS. Colonel Bradley, the commanding officer at the time, rebuffed and politely declined these offers. As from the Light Horse perspective, the SLDF was gone, but they were still a peacekeeping unit. The straw that finally brought Colonel Bradley to the table was when the coordinator threatened to cut trade to the Eridani Light Horse, and then all trade to the planets, garrisoning them. Shortly after, the negotiations started, but continued on for some time. Eventually, the Eridani Light Horse would sign on as soldiers of fortune in the employ of the DCMS, and with that, the Eridani Light Horse officially became mercenaries working for the Draconis Combine, going from SLDF unit to mercenaries of the highest regard, destined to have a storied and venerated history in the Inner Sphere.
Yep. And for those like me who started our Battletech journey with MechWarrior 3, this is the unit you play.
Yep, although several hundred years later.
Yes. That might be the other reason I really like this unit, is they were my my first taste of Battletech.
Mm-hmm. You always remember your first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, TRO 3058 Upgrade, Record Sheets 3058 Unabridged, Clan and Star League, TRO The Golden Century, Megamech, Combat Manual Mercenaries, and the Mercenary Handbook.
This podcast is made possible by our supporters on patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs, link in the description. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a community Discord, the Armory of Ouroboros, link in the description. You can email us at ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your platform of consumption, tell your friends about us, and share on your community platform of choice. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Our Ace Pilot Patreons are currently John Keith III.
Last dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, Mech Warriors.
Stay safe out there.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
I mean, the voice came
That's
out
a really
okay,
fast
but
beep, okay.
yeah.
You okay there, Craig? Greg?
You need some of your
Craig said we're
capacitors
okay.
swapped
He's
out.
missing the bottom half of his body. And by the bottom half, I mean everything below the neck.
He's a Futurama president.
He is. He's Nixon, but bleakest.
What's the difference? I mean, didn't he want to nuke everyone as well?
I don't think Nixon was a radical fundamentalist in religion. But I might be wrong on that one. I don't know.
I don't feel confident enough to say otherwise, but I feel like he did have some religious undertones at least.
Oh, no. It's America in the Cold War. Everything had a religious undertone.
It's true.
Because
Or
that's
wa- or
what
was
made
it
us
pa-
different from the communist.
Or was it patriotism as religion?
Yes.
Well, better dead than red, so...
But that is not a topic for this podcast, so we are going to start the podcast we're recording tonight.
Thanks, Liberty Prime.
Yeah.